The story begins in a quiet apartment in the city of Taipei, Taiwan, where, just like me, we see an unemployed guy named Jim who is with his wife, Kat, and they have just woken up. It is Kat who is currently handling all the household responsibilities alone. Kat tells Jim to get ready quickly and drop her off at the metro station because she has to go for a very important office meeting today. Kat reminds Jim about her hard work and vacations, saying she has to work extra hard so that she can take her leave next week and they can both go out somewhere together, as this plan of theirs had been pending for a long time. But just that, Jim says something that spoils the mood a bit.
Jim mentions that he has received a photography offer from a German company, and he himself doesn't know if he will be able to go on vacation next week as promised. Naturally, Kat gets upset hearing this, because she had worked very hard for the vacation she gets only once a year. Jim realizes his mistake, and while trying to appease her, says he will try to talk to his friend to push the work schedule forward, but Kat stays angry with him and leaves to freshen up. In reality, Jim has been sitting idle for a long time and desperately needs a job right now so that he can take on household responsibilities. During breakfast, Jim is scrolling through his phone, where his attention is drawn to a news report. In that video, a doctor was trying to warn people. The doctor says that he has observed symptoms of a strange kind of flu virus in a patient, which has been named the Alvin virus, and it could be extremely dangerous. However, at that time, no one had any idea that this strange virus was very soon going to turn the entire city into a graveyard. Just then, the doctor also makes a shocking claim. He says that a similar virus had appeared a few years ago, right before the elections, and he is absolutely sure that the government is deliberately spreading this rumor for votes. But unfortunately, Jim doesn't believe his words even a single bit. Jim thinks that the doctor himself is an agent of some political party and is spreading fake news to defame the opposition government before the elections. While watching this news, Jim steps out onto his balcony and is just looking at the morning view when his eyes fall upon an elderly woman whose behavior was extremely strange and terrifying. Jim calls out to her, and when the woman turns towards him, Jim is shocked because the woman's clothes were stained with blood and her face looked quite horrifying. Just then, Kat comes up to him and tells him to quickly drop her at the metro station, and by the time Jim looks back, that mysterious woman had disappeared. Then, one of Jim's neighbors, who has a cold, comes out to water his flowers. Jim advises him to go to a doctor, but his neighbor flatly refuses. He says that the flu is a common illness, and nowadays fake news is being spread that its symptoms can be quite fatal. Jim smiles at his words and says, "You have complete confidence in your health." After this, Jim takes his scooter and heads toward the station to drop Kat off at her office. On the way, they see police vehicles and a huge crowd, where the police were trying to subdue someone who had openly attacked others. Seeing this sight, Jim and Kat are shocked.
They cannot understand how a human being could become so violent. Anyway, after dropping Kat at the station, Jim speaks to clear Kat's anger. "Kat, I'm sorry. I can't see you working hard like this. That's why, first of all, I am looking for work. After that, wherever you say, I will go there, and we will have a lot of fun." Kat smiles at his words, says goodbye to him, and leaves from there. But both were unaware that this moment of theirs lasted only until here. Anyway, as soon as Jim turns back towards home, he sees on the way that the police officers have disappeared. They'd even left their vehicles abandoned. Jim thinks that perhaps the police must have gone after the man who was attacking people. After this, Jim goes to a restaurant to get his favorite breakfast. While waiting there, he begins looking at property prices in the newspaper, and it is his dream that one day he will buy his own house where he and Kat will live. At that very moment, suddenly the same old woman arrives there whom Jim had seen on the roof in the morning, who was actually the first victim of the Alvin virus and had now become a zombie.
A young man having breakfast in the restaurant goes up to her and asks her, "Are you not feeling well?" Just then, the old woman shows him her horrific face and spits on his mouth, and she pours boiling oil over the worker who was making breakfast and starts tearing off the worker's skin with her nails. Jim, standing nearby, tries to stop her, but her next victim was him, and the young man she had spit on had also become infected, who brutally kills his own friend. And before she can infect Jim as well, an out-of-control car runs her over. But upon seeing the driver, Jim lose his mind because his face had become terrifying, like that of a beast. Just then, that infected young man comes to kill Jim. Along with him, the other people whom that old woman had infected also chase after him. Jim somehow runs towards his apartment to save his life, comes inside and locks the gate. His heart was beating rapidly. He tries to understand what on earth has happened to the people.
At that very moment, he hears an emergency siren, and it is announced that all people should not come out of their homes because the zombie virus has spread rapidly throughout the city, and people infected by it have become quite dangerous. But suddenly, at that moment, the sound of infected people laughing begins coming from that microphone, meaning it was clear that this virus was indeed spreading very rapidly. Jim realizes that the news he saw in the morning was not a lie, and now he starts worrying about Kat, whom he immediately begins calling and messaging to know her condition. But just then, from behind, his same neighbor attacks him, the one who had a cold, which was actually a sign of being infected by the virus. His neighbor attacks Jim with a pair of plant trimming shears, but before Jim can steady himself, his hand gets caught by those shears, cutting off 2 of his fingers. His neighbor, who has now become a zombie, picks up Jim's fingers, eats them right in front of him, and talks dirtily about Kat, meaning it was also clear that this virus does not strip away people's memories, which makes them even more dangerous. Jim sees an opportunity and strikes his head, knocking him unconscious.
Following this, Jim, writhing in pain, runs away from the apartment, but the view outside was nothing less than hell. The virus has spread like wildfire. People are not dying. Instead, they are attacking each other like crazy. They are screaming, laughing, and enjoying the massacre. Seeing this sight, Jim runs toward his scooter to save his life, but hearing the sound of the scooter, dozens of zombies fix their eyes on Jim. Now Jim is alone, and a whole horde of hungry zombies is after him. The scene now shifts to Kat, who, completely unaware of the destruction in the outside world, is peacefully reading a book. Sitting right next to her is a very big businessman, whom we can call Lean, who, seeing Kat's beauty, tries to flirt with her and asks her, "What are you reading?" Kat says that she is reading a novel, but Lean says that no one reads books in the metro anymore. Everyone is busy with their own phones. Kat says, "You're right," but gradually his actions start bothering Kat a lot. He tells Kat, "You are very beautiful." At first, Kat ignores his words, but when Lean starts touching her, her patience snaps, and she tells him to sit quietly or else she will file a harassment case against him. Lean gets saddened by this and says he was merely praising her. But friends, in reality, his intentions were foul. After this, the metro stops at the next station, where a man wearing glasses boards. Meanwhile, to escape that creep, Kat gives her seat to a heavy-set girl named Molly. Lean has no interest in Molly. Therefore, he sits quietly and begins cursing his luck. While everyone in the metro is in their own zone, the man wearing glasses now begins behaving strangely and suddenly pulls out a knife, kills a young man standing near him, and like a madman, lunges at everyone else, killing several people as he has actually fallen victim to the Alvin virus. Lean even starts running away in fear. Meanwhile, some men present in the metro show courage and tackle the attacking man. Everyone felt that everything had now come under control.
But it wasn't like that at all, because the Alvin virus spreads like lightning, causing a few more people to get infected and launch attacks. Meanwhile, some zombies also begin misbehaving with girls, and now the rude Lean has also become a zombie, who first attacks Molly and gouges out one of her eyes, and now his next victim is Kat. But as soon as the metro stops at a station, a stampede breaks out. People run outside like crazy, but Kat shows intelligence. She fears that infected people might be hiding in the crowd, so she takes Molly and heads in the opposite direction. But where was her luck any good? Lean, who has become a zombie, is still not leaving Kat alone. Kat immediately runs toward the exit gate, taking Molly along, but on the way, she bumps into a gym boy. Before the gym boy can understand anything, Lean arrives there. That gym boy thinks that Lean is just an ordinary thug who is bothering girls. The gym boy shows his strength and lands a punch, but Lean bites off that gym boy's nose and, pulling an axe from the emergency exit, brutally kills him. This sight was so horrifying that Kat and Molly's souls shudder. They run toward the exit gate to save their lives and ask a man standing ahead for help, but instead of helping, that man starts closing the door.
But somehow, stumbling and falling, both manage to get out, where Molly's anger is through the roof, and she starts beating the man who had closed the door, whose name was Kevin. Kevin says in his defense that he thought both had turned into zombies and were coming to attack him, after which Kevin advises them to go to a nearby hospital so that Molly's wounds can be treated. But these three are unaware that Leanne has overheard their conversation. On the other side, Jim is stunned seeing the condition of the city because piles of corpses lay all around. Just then, a zombie who is doing disgusting things to girls spots him. Jim heads toward the mountains to save himself, but the path ahead was blocked. Jim moves forward via another route, but due to the pain in his fingers, he stops a little further along and wraps tape around his injury so that the bleeding stops. Then he also finds a large machete there, which he turns into a weapon. Just then, he hears some strange sounds. When Jim goes closer to look, his goosebumps stand up. There, some zombie children were brutally torturing a human being. Jim cannot bear to watch this, and risking his life, he fights those zombie children, after which those 4 zombie children run away from there. But unfortunately, the man he saved had also turned into a zombie.
Just then, those children return and attack him all at once, and Jim somehow saves his life and flees from there. Meanwhile, inside the hospital, there is silence, and Molly's treatment is underway. Just then, Kat realizes that her phone dropped somewhere along the way. Therefore, she borrows Kevin's phone and calls Jim, but Jim doesn't pick up the phone amidst all the running.
running. Just then, the president comes live on TV. The president states that 4.5 million people have been killed by this virus so far, and he talks about completely isolating some cities. But just then, something happens on screen that makes the entire world shudder, because the general who had become infected just a short while ago suddenly reveals his true form and shoves a grenade directly into the president's mouth, after which an explosion occurs on live TV and the signal cuts off. Seeing this horrifying sight, the fear inside the people present in the hospital turns into madness. People start fighting each other over small things and become hell-bent on killing. Humanity is completely dead. And amidst this chaos, Lean arrives at the hospital gate with a large army of zombies. Lean, who is still infatuated with Kat's beauty and wanted to molest her, reaches Molly while searching for her. Molly is helpless due to her wounds and cannot even move.
The brutality Lean commits against her there was highly shameful. On the other side, instead of fighting like some savior, Kevin cowers behind a table and covers his ears. He is so cowardly that he cannot even muster the courage to watch the destruction happening before his eyes. Meanwhile, amidst the peace of the mountains, when Jim checks his phone, he sees several missed calls. He immediately calls back, and hearing Kat's voice, his soul finds relief. Kat tells him that she is trapped in the hospital and zombies have taken over everywhere. Jim gives her courage and promises that he will definitely come to save her. But Jim knows that going back into that stronghold of death without any weapons or backup is suicidal. Meanwhile, Kevin tries to flee from the hospital, but look at his misfortune. He comes face to face with Molly, who is now no longer that old Molly, but has become a horrifying zombie. Even after becoming a zombie, hatred for Kevin remains in her mind. She gestures to the other zombies to attack Kevin so that she can play a game of torture with Kevin's body. Meanwhile, Kat runs toward the upper floor to save her life and locks the door with a strong iron rod. She thought she was safe, but zombie Lean's strength was now beyond human limits. He bends that heavy iron rod like a piece of paper and breaks inside. He has closed the door from the inside because he wants to hunt Kat alone. Just then, Kat shows her resourcefulness, and as soon as Leanne comes close to her, Kat discharges smoke on him using a fire extinguisher. Before Lean can understand anything, Kat strikes his head repeatedly with that same heavy cylinder, taking him down, and finally, she gets rid of that monster. Kat had not even recovered from this shock when a virologist arrives there and takes her inside a room. He immediately tells her to clean herself because this virus can also spread through bodily sweat or blood. When Kat fails to understand his words due to shock, the virologist pulls out his pistol. Now Kat is left with no option but to obey him. However, it seems that the man is not evil. He just wants to conduct research on this virus. And here we find out that this virologist is none other than the same doctor whom Jim had seen on his phone early in the morning. Kat understands his words and goes to take a shower. At that very moment, the doctor tells her that this Alvin virus attacks that part of the brain which controls human desires, after which humans lose control over themselves, and they stoop to any level to fulfill their most terrifying and suppressed desires. He also mentions that he had warned the government, but in the game of politics, his voice was suppressed, and now he has prepared a vaccine, and he needs Kat to test it, because the virus will spread in Kat's body in just a short while, and she too might perhaps turn into a zombie. Kat covertly sends her location to Jim, and when she goes to throw her clothes into the dustbin, she sees a zombie child in the bin whom the doctor had experimented on. But before Kat can understand anything, the doctor injects the vaccine into Kat as well, binds her with handcuffs, and tells her that he has received a help signal from the government and a helicopter is going to arrive on the roof soon. Meanwhile, Jim also reaches the hospital with a weapon, and guess what is going to happen next? Next, the doctor goes toward the roof with Kat, but just then, poor Kat somehow carries the injured doctor toward the roof. Jim is now no longer human. Jim begins to suspect the one he loved the most. Seeing Kat and the doctor together, he begins to doubt them. The doctor fires a shot at Jim, but Jim's zombie agility overpowers him. Kat locks the gate to save her life. Jim bangs on the gate from the outside like a madman. Kat asks him, crying, "Jim, how are you feeling?" There is no love left in Jim's eyes now. There is only hunger. He says, "If I come inside, I will chew you alive. I am very hungry because I haven't even eaten my favorite breakfast since morning." Hearing this, Kat's world was devastated. The very Jim who had once promised to save her is today wanting to eat her. All their dreams, that vacation, those memories, the virus took everything away. Just then, Kat hears the sound of a helicopter above and, with a heavy heart, runs toward the roof, leaving Jim behind. Jim, who has now become a beast, just gives a terrifying smile watching her leave. Further ahead, the sound of a gunshot is heard in the background, meaning the people on the helicopter shot Kat as well, mistaking her for being infected. So friends, this story teaches us that no illness or warning should be taken
lightly. Pandemics like COVID-19 have taught us that health is the greatest wealth.